the windows in your school.
What?
And so,
There's no intro? Dang.
what happened?
We're live, but we didn't get our intro song.
Oh, because what's up, ladies and germs? A little technical snafu there, but it's all good. All to the good. It's I was about to say it's Thursday, Webs. It's doggone Monday.
It is Monday Eve, my friend.
Doggone again, indeed. Monday Eve. Fun times. Monday Eve before we have to go back to hybrid tomorrow, which part of me is looking forward to, and part of me is like, yeah, this is going to be painful, fam. Again, when otherwise intelligent people are like, yo, if you simply open the windows to your classroom, you won't get the COVID. And you're like, when's the last time you've been in school homes? Because I don't have no windows in my classroom that I can actually open. Yeah, you start wondering, like, the expertise of these individuals is not in K-12 schooling. It is definitely not.
Also, like the perma portables. Yikes. I was worried about the health and safety of my portable before a pandemic. So I can't even imagine what it's like now. Those ventilation systems are like, if there are things you can count on, it's like death, taxes, and the fact that your AC is going to go out if you're teaching in a portable in Las Vegas in August. Guaranteed. It's going to happen.
Yeah, and when's the last time those HVACs have been looked at outside those? I mean, you've got like Man Thing and Swamp Thing fighting each other inside those air ducts. So it's probably not the picture of health in there before COVID. I know it's not the picture of health after COVID. So
Truth.
it will be interesting. And then like looking forward in time, like the whole 5 days a week thing. I'm really like I'm wondering very, very much how one is even like how they're in their mind justifying a lot of this stuff. Because it was bad enough, like in school with before COVID, it was like I had to line kids up and sit them shoulder to shoulder to be able to fit them in my classroom. Now, we had lice outbreaks, we had bed bug outbreaks. Um, you know, so like, what are you gonna tell me? Like, and again, as a specialist, I see double classes and sometimes 2.5 classes at one time.
Yeah. Yeah, my biggest one was a double second grade with an autism class. And it was like 50 kids, I think, in one room. Second grade.
Well, our PE teacher has 4 classes at a time sometimes. Like, how does one deal with that? And if it's inclement weather, that means you have to find some place that all those kids are going to be able to sit in. So, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting, but I digress. Tonight's show, Webs, we're going to talk a little bit about the C code, and C code is going to be Canvas, and we're going to kind of center at least one of our shows every week, Webs, on the Canvas situation. And in order to kind of set this up, you made the transition from a a teacher to a software developer. What part of that journey was the most scary for you, and why was that the case?
I can only pick one.
Yeah, just pick one. I mean, we can go deeper into the conversation.
Okay. There's actually two I'm gonna pick, and that the first one was that I would fail. Like that was a very scary thing because this was, I was in a very secure, stable job, and so this idea that I was going to abandon that in favor of something else, and I also wasn't going the traditional route. Like I didn't go to get a degree in computer science. I didn't go to a boot camp. I was attempting to teach myself how to do it. Also felt a little on the foolish side, but I've been reassured by many people, like, you have a whole degree in education. Like it makes sense that you could design your own, program or whatever. So that was the first thing, was general failure. Then once I actually did get a job in the field, it was, I know nothing. I've gone from a field where I knew I wanted to be my whole life, and I had nearly a decade, really more than a decade if you count my undergrad years, more than a decade of experience in a lot of different roles, seeing a lot of different pieces of how the industry works. And I was essentially like not totally throwing that away, because I think that education, like understanding how people learn, is a really useful skill, because basically every meeting is a knowledge transfer. Every time I pair with someone, it's a knowledge transfer. So knowing good pedagogy really helps in those situations. Every time we do a showcase, that's a knowledge transfer. So being able to effectively communicate the important parts of what I'm trying to say is a really useful skill. And being able to do it in such a way that it sticks with people, that I'm hitting the useful things and I know approximately how much information to include, all very useful. But I'm going into this field where I am not fresh out of college. And hello, Taco Dog. And I'm not fresh out of college. But I'm older. So it was really strange to be like one of the older people, or if not the oldest person in the room, but at this beginning level of like, I don't know anything. And that was really difficult, because I think as adults, especially, we're so used to being comfortable and knowing how to do things that it is scary not knowing. And it's frustrating too, because it's like, I don't have experience to fall back on. And so you spend a lot of time feeling ignorant and just powerless. So that was also scary. And it started to make me wonder, like, did I make a mistake? Am I ever going to get back to a level of comfort that I had when I was in education? So those are probably the two scariest things. Like, did I make a terrible mistake, for one? And am I going to make it in this field? Am I going to be able to make a career for myself? And also just kind of not abandoning what I knew before, but voluntarily starting from square one.
Interesting. So, in terms of the acquisition of the skills necessary to be a developer, what was the scariest part of that? In terms of, like, I mean, I'm assuming some imposter syndrome and stuff happened once you acquired the job, but in terms of laying out and trying to learn how to do this new thing, what were the places perhaps that you had some trepidation?
Okay, I don't know if I'm understanding your question right, but so because the most of the people in tech don't come from an education background, there's a lot of useful content out there, like tutorials and things, that tend to skip steps when it comes to like scaffolding learning. So it got really frustrating. There would be a lot of times where I thought I was doing something wrong, and that's why the thing wasn't working right, when in fact there was like a whole step missing. And it was one of those sort of group knowledge things that, everybody knows that you're supposed to source your bash profile in order to make your settings that you just changed in that file work, or something like that. Like some just random piece of information that is like considered just a default. Everybody knows that. But if you're new to the field, like, you would not know that thing. The other thing is like, there is so much to learn, just so much. Whereas like, it'd be like trying to learn every possible subject and grade level in education if I tried to learn every language in tech, or every framework or whatever. So there would be a lot of times where you'd start on a project and be like, okay, here's this new framework or this new language or this new paradigm, whatever. So just a lot of new stuff, and reconciling with the fact that I am not going to know everything. I'm not going to learn everything. And it changes all the time, because I was talking to a group of people earlier, like, software doesn't stay static. So you can have situations where like what worked yesterday suddenly doesn't work this morning, but has nothing to do with you. It's because the version updated, and now there's something that throws a wrench into things. So that's part of it too.
Indeed. So, like, was there anything that initially intimidated you, but now that you kind of like got used to it, it's like, hey, that wasn't that bad of a thing. That like I'm thinking because this episode is going to set up kind of you kind of walking us through some snippets and some ideas that we might want to use with CSS and with HTML. There might be some viewers, especially on the teacher side, who have no experience doing this, that might say, "Oh my God, that looks very complicated." Was there any time that as you started to make that shift, you thought the same thing, but in retrospect, you're like, "Hey, once I got into it, not that big of a deal."
Oh yeah, absolutely. So like I remember I was doing my very first my first job that I got was with ThoughtWorks, and I was doing my like uh usually with software development jobs or like code jobs, they give you like a take home project kind of thing to do. And so I was working on that, and it it was like a you had to do sort of like a cash register thing. You had to take in some prices of things, calculate the cost, and output what the final cost of whatever it was would be. And I was working on that and thinking like, I'm never going to get this. This is so hard. Like I can never possibly make a career if this is as hard as it is, whatever. And then I remember like a year or so later, like after I did get the job and I started and everything. I had started on a new project and I was working in um, a new framework that I didn't know anything about. Like I had heard of it, but not used it. And as I was using it, I was recognizing like, oh, wait, I know this pattern. This is the same as in this other language. Oh, wait, I know this pattern too. This is the same as in this other language. And so it became like, wait a minute, there are these patterns that even if the language syntax might be a bit different here or there, like, oh, I have to end my lines with a semicolon, or I can skip the semicolon, or, it might be curly braces in one language and parentheses in another, but essentially it's about the same. So it's kind of like, it kind of reminded me a bit of like, cause I know Spanish, I can kind of parse Italian. Well, and I'm starting to learn Italian, but I could kind of like find similar words. You find similarities across all the Romance languages. And that is very much, I think, how code languages are. Like, as you get used to what they are, you're like, oh, okay, I can kind of make out what this is approximately saying. And then suddenly everything became easier. I think it's kind of like after you pass your second or third year of teaching, suddenly everything clicks and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I get this. This isn't nearly as hard as it was my first couple years. I think it's kind of the same. It's just you have to be patient with yourself and forgiving with yourself and not like, get upset that you get frustrated and doesn't come as easily as maybe other things do.
Oh, very cool, very cool. So,
Also, it makes you feel like you have superpowers. Like now I feel like I'm basically a magician.
superpowers, indeed.
You can just bring things out of the ether.
Indeed, indeed. So we're gonna talk a little bit about Canvas, but again, we're gonna be looking through two tools that perhaps again the kindergarten teacher and you might not even look at as viable options. And because we do have our software developer here with us, she's going to kind of walk us through some stuff. And first of all, we're going to start Wells with like what exactly is HTML? What does that mean? And what value would that add to a teacher learning a little bit about what that is and what that does?
Yeah. So I think about HTML. So if you think about it like building a house, right? The first thing you need in the house is the frame so that you can put everything else on it. And so I think of HTML as like the basic frame of a house. It's just the structure of the page. So it's not like usually if you're say in like a slide deck, you can move all the pieces around wherever you want. With HTML, it's more like here's a list of the resources I need and how I kind of want them to show up from top to bottom. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, which is not important, but now you know what the letters stand for. And so it's just providing the basic structure for things. That's all it's doing. Do you want me to show an example?
Of course. Hold on. Give me just a second. Rock and roll.
Okay, cool. Let me switch to here. Okay. So can you see my Canvas instance?
Yep, you're good.
Cool. So if you were in Canvas, you can get to the HTML by going to this little icon down here, switch to HTML editor. And all HTML is saying, here are the basic pieces that I plan to use. And they all have different names. You can go through, there's a resource called W3 Schools. They have like a tutorial that you can work through that gives you the basics of what HTML is. And one of the things that I really like about it is it gives you these try it yourself boxes. So the HTML we have here, you don't have to worry about this piece when you're working in Canvas or actually any of this. All you worry about is things like the P tag, the H1 tag, that kind of a thing. And all these are representing, because you'll see too, like here are the things that I can see, which are right here. This is for headers. So H1 being the biggest, H6 being the smallest. So if I copy this and do this, and we'll make it a 6 because that's the smallest one. And it's just like a sentence or quotation marks is kind of how I think about it. This is the opening tag and this is the closing tag. And the only difference between the two is the closing tag has this little forward slash. So it's just like writing a sentence with a, capital at the beginning, period at the end. But if I hit run now, I have another, this is a heading and it's super tiny. And you can do all the numbers in between, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is just saying it's a paragraph. So it's starting it on a new line, just like you would a paragraph. And there's a bunch of other things you can do. Maybe horizontal rule works. Or I could do another paragraph. And then if I hit run, now I have this line in the middle and I have my words. So that's the basic structure. And then we use something else to actually like paint the walls and put up curtains and all that kind of thing. This is just saying, here are the pieces that I want to show on the page. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we got it. I mean, the kind of the interesting thing with that is one of the things that I constantly kind of is interesting to me as I go in. There's this huge push for coding in school. You're like, oh, okay, well, it's just language, bro. Like, first of all, like, it's interesting to me. Like Vegas, for example, there is no second language courses in elementary school. Right, the most optimal time for me to learn a second language, I don't get the opportunity to do so. I have to wait till I'm in middle school or high school. So I waste, the time I'm acquiring English, where I can be acquiring Spanish or Chinese or whatever at the same time and really reconciling those languages together to become fluent in both languages. It's an issue. And so one of the things that I really I dislike about the push for coding is not the parsing that in with the idea that it's just language acquisition. And there are structures to sentences. There are structures to these languages, just like you just showed. And once we learn those things, a lot of the magic leaves it. Then it's like, okay, cool. There are rules to this thing, and if I learn the rules, then I can be successful. And I think a lot of the coding in school is just like, let's move a block around. You're like, all right, why are we wasting time with this, fam? Like, why this kid is writing sentences. If we make them write sentences in this other language, then they can reconcile these ideas side by side, and suddenly I'm gaining fluency in both of those things rather than moving magic blocks around for whatever reason we move the magic blocks.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I feel like coding has definitely become a buzzword, and I don't think that the underlying purpose for it is really authentically attached. Like a lot of times it's just some random task. Like you said, here, move this block around this page. But like, why am I moving this block around this page? And I think the more important thing to glean from coding is being able to understand how logic works. That's really, I think, the most important thing, being able to understand how if-then statements work and what consequences of certain choices are. Like when I was in my last year of teaching, one of the things I did with my students was I had them write algorithms for things that they did in everyday life. So they had to write an algorithm for what their morning routine was. They had to do an algorithm or a function for being able to brush their teeth or take a shower or something. And I just had them write it out on construction paper. And then we got into like, okay, you might have certain parameters like part of your getting ready in the morning is what shirt you're going to wear. So that's a different parameter. So the shirt may change, but the step of putting your shirt on is still there. So it's understanding the logic, but it makes sense. Like most teachers have not been trained or had any experience with like how logic works or computer science principles or anything like that. So I feel like why would you know that that's the beneficial part without any
but
experience
I
in that
think
realm?
that's where like the gatekeepers of magic knowledge, and this is why I think like there's a very niche group of individuals. Like coding is this magical stuff that only we understand, and if you know, like, so I mean,
So
look, man,
that's actually a conversation in the development community, is this idea that like, oh, it's this special thing that not everybody, can do, and you have to have passion for it, and that's who anybody can learn it just like any skill.
I mean,
We're not magic.
once you pull the wizard's curtain back and you see what actually is going on, you're like, all right, you're not that special, fam. Like, if I can read and write and do some basic logic type stuff. And the other thing that I think coming into that conversation is also like being able to make metaphors and similes and compare and contrast systems of thought that you already understand. So we're almost. One of the big things is like, look, when you start looking at recipes, algorithm, you start looking at putting a video together, algorithm, you start learning how to do anything. There are steps. Do this, then do this. If you do these steps out of order, it is not going to work, or it might work and at a quarter of the capacity that it wouldn't if you did it the correct way. So I mean,
I'm just imagining you're making a burrito and you put the rice in before it's cooked.
I mean, come on, like we are all, nothing exists by itself, right? Everything is connected in some kind of way, shape, or form, and I think that's one of the things that when you talk to teachers, people get intimidated by this. Oh, this new, and you're like, look, fam, like literally, first and foremost, you don't really have to learn the language. You can cheat. Other people have learned the language for you. Copy and paste that crap right in the page, fam. You don't have to actually learn it, right? I just have to learn who to deal with.
That's my whole job.
I mean, bam. I mean, when I get
copy
stuck,
copy paste, figure out what went wrong.
what do you do with anytime you get stuck in anything? You go right on Google and say, okay, look, this part of my video won't render. Is this a known issue with this product? Did somebody figure out a workaround? Again, I'm not a software developer. I do make videos on a daily basis. I do graphic design, etc. I do not have the font of all graphic design and video in my head. We have the internet for a reason, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's literally what, there's a whole website called Stack Overflow. And like, if that website goes down, development across the entire world just stops forever, because then we don't know where to go to look for like what problems we have. And if you look on any code repository website, GitHub or GitLab or whatever, there's always like a column or a space for issues, like people who file issues about your code. There's a place where you can have conversations around issues that other people have had. See, told you, Taco Dog agrees with me.
I see it. Indeed. So I mean,
and so yeah, it's not a new thing. And I think this also goes to the whole like, what is tech literacy? And I think some of tech literacy is the ability to problem solve and to know that I can Google basically any problem. Like, I replaced the sink in my bathroom by watching a YouTube video. I didn't know what a basin wrench was before I started that project. But when I got to the point where I couldn't unscrew the little bolt thing on the bottom of it, I looked up, like, is there a tool that does this? And sure enough, it's called a basin wrench, and now I own one.
Facts. But I think this goes back to the further my previous statement that teaching doesn't exist, man. It's not a profession in terms of just being what it was 15 years ago or 20 years ago, 25 years ago. If you're not a traveling companion on the journey toward someone figuring some stuff out, and you want to go and sit in front of the bus and say, I know everything about this, and you will do exactly as I tell you to, them times should be dead, man. Because you don't know everything about what you're paid to know about. No one does. Because if they did, then, like, I mean, I don't know what that portends. First of all, you would call them a liar to their face. But second of all, Like again, it's a lot less work not knowing everything. And I think that's another kind of benefit from saying, yeah, I don't know how to do that. Let's figure it out together, kid. Let's point ourselves towards a certain direction. So that's HTML. You said that's like, ordering stuff on the page. The other deal that when we start looking at Canvas that's going to be very important is this idea of CSS. Like, what does that mean? How does that impact stuff on a website? Is it even important to know?
Yeah. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and they're so called because they are sheets of styling information and they get applied in cascading order. So that means that the things with the lowest specificity get applied first, but if there's something with higher specificity that like basically is a trump card and says, nope, I get to go instead. It's like playing the draw four in Uno. Like, nope, I get the you have to pick up 4 cards now. I get to go first. I'm the best.
Indeed.
So, yeah. So it's basically that is the interior decoration of your HTML. That's what makes it look pretty. That's what makes it all fancy. And actually, I can show you an example with just google.com. So let me switch my camera. All right. I can't see me, so you'll have to tell me that you can see my screen.
You're good.
Okay, cool. So if I just right click and go to inspect element, it's going to bring up my developer tools, which shows me here's all the HTML for this page, and it highlights it as I mouse over it. And on this side, I can look at what the CSS is. So there's all these different, there's color, which is the color of my text, what font family I'm using, what the font size is. This is all the pretty stuff. And you can apply CSS in a couple different ways. You can have it as an external sheet that you reference, usually in the header. So like, that's JavaScript. Here we go. So here's a style sheet. It says text/CSS rel equals style sheet, and then it references an external style sheet. You can add it as a style block. So this is all mushed together. And they took all the spaces out, but it's the same idea. Like it's listing all the different styling, so much styling. Or you can style things in line. So you can actually add styling right into here. So here's some style. But I can also just say straight up in here, I can change this and say style. And let's change the background color to purple. And now on my page, my background color is purple, just like that. So how does this apply when you're working in Canvas? Well, it's the same idea. So if I had some element, let's say I have a paragraph and I'm saying this is cool. I'm going to close my paragraph and I'm going to add style to it. And this is important that it's written exactly like this, where you do style equals and then quotations. We'll change the color of the font and we'll make it green, and we'll change the background color and we'll make it, Mike, pick a color.
Fuchsia.
Fuchsia. I don't know if that's an acceptable color, but let's find out. I also can't spell fuchsia. How do you spell fuchsia?
F-U-S.
Fuchsia. F-U-S-C-H-I-A. Okay, also, people, the internet is a thing, so this is why spelling isn't important. F-U-S-C-H-I-A. Let's see if that actually comes up as a color. It does not. Pick a different color.
Thanks, Taco Dog. Hold on. Let me check the volume here.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Webs. I'll figure it out.
I may be really high. Let me bring my sound down. Because I talk really loud. So, I think we might be able to do just pink.
That works.
Let's try pink. Yeah, there we go. So now our background is pink and our text is green. Huzzah. Easy as that. One of the things that came up on Saturday, should I show tables or should I wait for tables?
Wait for tables. So
okay. All right, cool. And another, again, good resource, you can do tutorials on W3 Schools, and you have these like example things, or you can go into the developer tools and screw around with Google if you want to. But same idea. You can do the try it out calculator kind of thing. This will give me, like, let's say I want to change my color to orange. And I hit run, and now my title is orange. Another way of doing colors besides just typing the name of the color is to use a hex code. And nobody has the hex codes memorized. There are a few that are like FFF is white, I think. Yeah. And then 000 is black. Ta-da. So there are a few that, let's change this back to light blue, that are memorizable, but that's basically it. But it is so hex code is made out of the numbers 0 to 6, I think, and then the letters A to G, I believe. But you can use this really cool website, coolers.co, and you can check out, like, where is it? Explore, I think. It'll give you some really popular color schemes, and you can kind of create your own too. So see, it's giving me 2A9 D8F. So if I copy that and go back to my try it out editor.
With colors, what do we want to be mindful of, Webs?
I would be careful of making things high contrast is really important. Also, there are folks who are colorblind, so they can't see the difference between certain colors. I think one of the most popular ones is red green. So making sure that I would avoid using red and green if at all possible, or use them with high contrast differences, or don't use them in situations where the indication of color is the only way to know the difference between two things. For example, like we had a diagram at work a couple weeks back where it was really important to be able to distinguish which things were red lines and which things were green lines. Well, someone who's colorblind, red, green colorblind, can't distinguish the difference. So now it becomes a communication problem. But if I hit run, now I have that color I just selected. It's important you have the hashtag. Don't forget about that. Otherwise it won't work right. But that's also, you have milieu colors to pick here. You can choose a palette that you like if you want to and open it in the generator. And it will give you the ability to toggle the colors that you want to keep. And then you can like spin the wheel basically, or add more colors to get a different kind of palette. And it'll give you colors that are like in that same family or something. I'm not an art teacher, but you can also swap them. Where's the switchy switch one? You can view shades. So if I wanted to go with this shade for some reason, I wanted a darker color, you can copy the hex. That's probably the coolest thing, is you can just copy the hex color right from there. You can also, if you create an account, you can save your palettes. So, spacebar generates color. So when I hit the spacebar, the ones I locked will stay in place, but it'll swap out. Ooh, I do not like that. It'll swap out the edge colors. Maybe I want to lock this one in place, but swap the other two. And you can just keep swapping them.
Indeed.
It's pretty cool. I think that covers everything I wanted to share about. I'll add this. I think we have a bunch of resources. We were talking about specificity. So you can label things in HTML by an ID or by a class, or you can just talk about like specific elements. And so if I had something that was just like the paragraph tag, it would get a score of 1. But if I had a paragraph tag with an ID of like webs, now the score is 101. So if I had that compared to just a P, like this is going to win because it's more specific. So if this was red and this was purple, purple would win.
Indeed. The things you learn.
Indeed.
All right. So in terms of CSS, HTML is kind of the function, right? CSS is more the aesthetic type. Okay, cool. You got what's going on the site. I want to make it pretty now after the fact. All right, this is what I want things to look like, et cetera, et cetera. So still going back to that design thinking kind of framework, we want to get the basic house there first, and then we can do bring the painters in and pay the HGTV people to come in, like Pimp My House or whatever it is after we finish. All right, dope. Now, kind of looked a little bit at your Canvas situation, and one of the things that as our school district moves toward this, either very intentional, you should use Canvas because it's the official learning management system of the Clark County School District hustle, or you know what, this thing is here. We don't need to, just looking at what you just did, I don't have to be fluent in HTML. I just got to speak Spanglish, right?
I think that's
So
accurate.
the other thing is the embed code situation, right? Which is just HTML code from one site to the next, right? And that is going to be like a superhuman power, given that that is something that's doable in Canvas, which is not so doable in Google Classroom, which most of our teachers are going to be switching from. So, as we go into this next segment, where we're going to spend the majority of our time here, just kind of resources and strategies around taking the HTML from one place, from either a website that already has the HTML set up for you, embed codes from a different website or whatever. You showed a couple of websites previously with the CSS, everything's there. Before we get to that, Webs, could I go to W3 Schools and simply just copy and paste what I see there and copy that into my Canvas class and just edit it from there?
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you go through it, I think the tutorials are a nice place to start because then it'll give you the basic idea of like what pieces you're messing with.
Mm-hmm.
So it would kind of give you this idea that I think what we talked about last time was intelligence is knowing cabbage is a vegetable and wisdom is knowing not to pair it with jelly beans.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll give you that idea that like, oh, this is a P tag does this. It's a paragraph tag. Or and you don't have to know all the things. Like I almost always have to go look up stuff because I don't have it automatically committed to memory. So I what was I trying to do the other day? I think I was trying to do a vertical align and I had to go look up what vertical align was because I couldn't remember what it was. And if you Google like the thing that you're looking for, like how do I center text in a table or something, you will be able to find that really easily.
And so the other thing though is cheating, right? I mean, I say cheating because I love that term just because it sounds bad. But like anybody who's really good at anything is a cheater, like straight up and down. I mean, again, I think the idea. I'm more of the art person, so the whole idea is yes, I stole that, but I elevated it, right? Not just stealing something and then reproducing and saying ta-da. It's I stole that idea from you and I made that idea better, right? I made it look cooler. I added this flair and this changed this thing or whatever. I'm always reminded as a kid, and this might be if you're not a hip hop fan, this might be like a reference that goes over your head or whatever, or that you just don't get. But Dapper Dan is one of the I guess the leading guard of urban style, but he just took like Gucci stuff and repurposed it and made it his own thing. And like Gucci never like gave him a shout out until recently, and now Dapper Dan's like he got to be in his 50s or 60s at this point. But everyone had these. You would hear it in rap songs all the time. Dapper Dan, this and that. And you know, as a kid, I'm like, who is Dapper Dan? Like, what's going on? So I asked my cousin. He was like, oh, he's just this dude who takes all this Gucci stuff and he kind of just repurposes their stuff into his own designs. And I mean, that's we kind of want to be Dapper Danish in this scenario. So, can you walk us through looking at your Canvas instance? So your Canvas page, and actually, let me share my screen very quickly, Webs, because I want you to actually be a fly on the wall as I walk through this.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is one of the things, again, I am not a software developer. I'm simply somebody who likes to cheat. And as soon as I find some way to cheat, I use that cheat over and over again. And so this is just like the free version of Canvas. All right, cool. And we're just going to go and let's look at a page. Let's actually look at a module very quickly. All right, cool. So I'm just going to add a page here. And so, Webs, one of the things I try to think about as I am the teach the toy in the 80s. I had no idea that was a toy in the 70s teach. Um, One of the things that I try to make sure that I do is when I'm first learning how to do something, if the page already has assets, I want to see what those assets look like. So, for example, if I click here and go to heading 3, right, and say
Mm-hmm.
my name is Bob. Now, the cheater in me is going to say, that's on that page. I know there's some underlying code underneath that. What does that look like as underlying code? So then I'm going to go to my raw editor here and say, oh my goodness. Now I know what an H3, I don't got to learn crap. I just have to be able to say, anytime I want that header, let me copy that. And it already did it for me, right? So a lot of the go ahead, Webs.
No, I was just gonna say, if you wanted to change the color of that text, do you have the power to do it?
No idea.
Not there. I mean, on the other
Oh, on this page, yeah,
yeah, on that page.
yes.
Where's your color thing? And oh, but okay. Can you get? But if you want a very specific color, you don't have that power, right?
No, it'd have to be anything from the. Actually, we have the color picker here, so we can put hex codes in here.
Oh, okay. So you can do the color picker. Okay, cool.
Yep.
So that right there that Mike just highlighted, that's where you would put your hex code if you wanted to pick a very specific color, say from a coolers palette. If you click and yep, right there, that's where your hex code would go.
So part of the thing, Webs, to me is like knowing where you're ignorant and paying attention, right? Knowing I have no idea to do this, so I need to pay attention to every little step that I make, right? Because the other thing that I think is really interesting is like adding video to stuff and then seeing what what the HTML looks like behind the scene. Adding some audio and seeing what that looks like. And then kind of one of the ways I cheat all the time is I have a notes document on my computer where I just copy and paste stuff in the note. So that anytime I need to come back to something, I copy and put it back in the note. Hey, I know how to do that for right now. Let me not forget that. Name the note, cheat codes for XYZ video game or this website or whatever it is, boom, boom, boom. And then I can go and copy and paste those things all the way around. And again, I am not a software developer. I'm just somebody, again, who finds a easy way to go and exploit stuff so I don't have to remember it anymore. All right. So the other thing, Webs, I was going to ask you is, all right, so cool. That thing is there, that header, and anytime that I change that HTML is going to change, right? So it's a header 4 right now. All right. The colors are going to change, all that wonderful stuff. In terms of really taking things to this, like a next level, right? Saying that I really want this page to be not what Canvas gave me. I want it to be really, really attractive. Knowing that, however, I need to make sure my accessibility is straight. I don't want to have, again, like you said, the red-green issue or anything that's going to cause a screen reader to be, have some difficulties, anything like that. What would you say? Is there a way to go, and I'm going to flip us back out of here. Is there a way for me to have a place to have a default style for a page somewhere? Would I keep that in Canvas? Would I want that in some kind of external tool? Could I just keep that code on a Google Doc? Like where could I hold that information so that if I wanted to have, this is the Mike Lang course style, this is how all my courses are going to look, and I want that code to get somewhere where I can get to it easily, where exactly would you where would I put that so it's sufficient? Oops.
So that's a good question. If you were a developer, I'd say GitHub. If you were a designer, I'd say something like Figma. But as a teacher, I would probably use something like Google Slides or yeah, I would probably use Google Slides. And here's the reason I would use Slides over Docs. So like I mentioned before, there are 3 different ways of accessing style. Unfortunately, as far as I know, the only option you have in Canvas is inline style. You can't reference an outside style sheet and you can't create a style block. If you try, it'll just wipe it away. So what you could do is basically create a lookbook for yourself where you put all your little snippets into like a slides notebook or a slide deck notebook, basically. And like say for the colors, and I do this for our stuff a lot. If I find a color palette that I like, and I want to have a sample of it like on my computer, I don't want to have to go to Coolers and bring up the palette and everything. I will just take a screenshot of the hex codes with a little bit of color border so that I know what color I'm referring to, and add that as like a kind of like when you're designing a house, going back to the house analogy, you get this book from your designer that has samples of like all the different materials and the different paint colors and all that kind of stuff. You would basically be building that for yourself in a Google slide deck, because then you'd have these snippets all in one place. You would have a little description of what they do. You could copy paste it whenever you needed it. You don't have to retype it or try and remember it. It's just this kind of ongoing notebook of little snippets and useful things. And you have the ability to add images right next to your snippets. So like I said, with those, the color snippet, you would know exactly what colors you're referring to. If you wanted to do like a little screenshot sample of what the output would be. So maybe I write up a little piece of code for myself, like HTML and CSS for, I don't know, a table with a certain border that I do in my intro pages. I can take a picture of what it looks like and then put the code next to it. So I remember, like, to make this thing, this is the code that I need. Because I think one of the advantages most people will find with using, like, being able to tweak that underlying HTML and CSS is you'll have a higher degree of control over your style, and adjusting the size of things will probably be a lot easier if you're using hard numbers, and it'll be a lot more replicable than trying to drag things to a certain size.
Definitely. So yeah, that kind of reinforces, like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. Because the other thing, Webs, is like just kind of looking at, just got rid of everything that's on the page. And one of the things that, as you were talking, one of the things that I was processing was, like, again, when I was cheating, as I continue to cheat, like, what are ways that I, kind of circumvent what would generally be my process, right? And so the other thing that's interesting about the free version as opposed to the version that the Clark County School District works with is this. So I'm going to go, and I'm going to go that route. First of all, Webs, I'm going to let you walk them through the tables in just a second. But first of all, if I but this is just from Padlet, right? And one of the things that I was very interested in was, like, having partnered with you for a few years now, like looking through for words inside here that I either understand, or with words and numbers that have values that I could replace to see what happens, right? So if I'm looking at here and it says this is padding, obviously, all right, and the block height is 1, there's 16 pixels of height there, right? All right, cool. It has this, like, with the source, I'm assuming SRC, as I have constantly stated the source. All good, Taco Dog. All right, width and everything like that.
Thank you for stopping by.
In the bottom left-hand corner there, Webs, it says raw HTML editor. Now, if I click that, it says pretty HTML editor. In the last couple of days playing around with it, I was like, what's the difference? Is there a difference between the pretty and the raw? Like, what exactly is the difference between those two statements?
Yeah, go back to pretty. Oh, where'd your code go? Oh, so see how it highlights the beginning and end with colors? So like your opening tag at the front is highlighted in green, then the content of it is highlighted is blue. So it gives you those different colors to be able to tell the difference. It makes it a lot more readable. Oh, well, it may not seem a lot more readable, but it's more readable than if you go back to raw HTML editor. It's just all black text.
And this is what
so you can't really tell at a glance where your opening and closing tags are.
This is what we get at Clark County. Just the raw.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, so it makes it kind of difficult. And that's why, for those who have seen these shows before, one of the things I always do is this. Oops, I don't want to do that at all. One of the things I do is this. And I take that and I put that where I want it. Great. And then I flip it over. So then I've got that nice little, that's where I'm going to put the thing at. It doesn't matter here because this is full screen. But generally, again, cheat, hey, I can move it where I want to move it if I wasn't using tables and put things there. And Webs, you kind of brought up tables, so I'm gonna go ahead and let you kind of rock and roll with that. The tables deal is super helpful. Um, I was doing tables kind of the laborious way, and then Saturday Webs was like, "Oh, let me show you how to do this tables thing better." And I was like, "Oh, cool." Well, now I had this like hack thing that now I can now avoid having to go and erase things on the page. And it's not like a difficult transition. It's like really not simple, but very, very linear. It will definitely get your brain going. So Webs, go ahead and show us your screen and rock and roll.
How are you doing the getting rid of the borders before?
I was simply going through to the top, going to the tables and actually manually telling the tables to hide the borders.
Uh-oh, behind the scenes. So interesting. Okay, so here's what my brief little tutorial on the tables. So you have the tables little icon thing, and a lot of folks do their like keeping their page organized using tables. If you got fluent enough in CSS, you wouldn't have to use tables to put your objects where you want them to be. But for now, we're just going to do a table of 6 blocks. And so the thing that Mike was talking about with getting rid of the borders, I don't even know, where's the styling for that? Is it here?
Up the table. Next. Yep.
Oh, so like table properties? Yep. Oh, okay, so you can go table property 0, or you can go here, go to border and change that to 0. And then when you go back, now you don't have to worry about that. You still have the ability to like move these if you want to, and it will retain that width. But remember, we talked about at the beginning, like the structure idea. So all this is saying is, hey, I want a table. Hey, here's the body of the table. You can have a header section as well, but we don't have that for this one. And then it's saying, here's a row. Here's the first column, second column, third column. Here's the end of that row. Here's a new row, all 3 columns, end of that row, end of the body, end of the table. So that's all that's saying. So just that same idea of the cheat where you can say like embed here. And then let's say I wanted to do, this is my favorite one to embed, is the Seth Meyers, thank you, Giphy. I'm going to go to embed. I'm going to copy this, go back to here, embed here, paste, and then ta-da, there's my Seth Meyers GIF. I can change the size of that. Let's say I want it to be smaller. This is pixels, by the way. So I want it to be half as big as it was before. Now it's half as big. There's no like, can you even resize on these? I don't know if you can. But let's say also I didn't want this to be a link anymore. I can just delete the link. And oh, that's still a link, but my link down here is gone. And then you have the ability to like, you know, you can change the way that things are situated. But let's say, I don't know, maybe this top row, I do want that to have a border. So I can say border equals, I don't know, like 3 pixel solid green. Style quotes, semicolon. Oh, what did I do wrong? And it got rid of it. Okay, row, yep. Style equals. Oh, I know why. Because border isn't part of the style. That's why. I thought that was weird. Border equals, here we go. 3 pixels solid green. Okay, which gets me into that CSS can be finicky sometimes, and that can be frustrating. See how it keeps wiping it away? An alternative would be like I could go to each cell and change it. I could have the whole table have borders. It could also be that border collapse is on. Maybe if I got rid of that, it might change it. So CSS can be frustrating at times. So if you get into a situation like that where it's not working the way you want it to and you're feeling frustrated, you can just quit. Like, it's fine. Or maybe I do want to keep my border and it's going to be 3 pixel solid green. Now let's see if it works. There we go. It's black, but not green. That's interesting. I wonder if I do, where did my colors go? Nope, that's specificity. Did I close them? Oh no, here they are. Let's do sandy brown. Oops. It doesn't even look like a brown. It looks like an orange. Solid. Nope, still black. Don't know why. Que sera. So even somebody who feels like I should know how this works, for some reason it's not working, which actually is a good point. So one of the things about CSS is sometimes you'll find places where they've added exclamation point important. And if that happens, it's going to override everything. It's like hey, look, accessibility checker. It's like the biggest thing. I don't see it here. I thought maybe I might. But that is something to look out for, is if something uses important, then you're going to run into problems because nothing will override it, and it's really frustrating. And that has nothing to do with you. And there's no way of knowing what the other like style sheets are. So you may run across a hiccup every now and then, but for most basic stuff, I've found it works just fine. Like for this, if I wanted to do style background color, and we want that to be whatever sandy brown was, see, that works just fine. So, and then you have the, like I said, the ability to like tweak things as you need to. There's a lot more fine-grained control, but with that comes the frustration of like, maybe it's too much. So I like your approach, Mike, of like, it's kind of like you have a recipe to start with, and then you learn to swap out certain ingredients, or you know what profiles to pick, and you know what can you substitute for wine instead of something else. Can I use beer in this recipe instead, or can I swap out tomatoes for eggplant? So you learn those different things, and then you can start to craft your own recipes by putting whatever it is you want together.
Facts. So I think that it's there's very so my dad always said learn just enough to be dangerous, right? So you don't need to be a Mensa level, going to the Software Developer Hall of Fame in order to do stuff. Generally, how I use the stuff is embed code. I love when websites have embed codes because that means that's one less place my kids have to go. They can stay right in Canvas. I'm going to take this stuff. The colors in the background and stuff like that, in the grand scheme of things, are those uber important? Nope, not in my opinion, they aren't. Will it make your page very pretty? Yes, it could make it very pretty. But if you don't know how to do that, that's not going to affect the function of how your lessons work, right? The tables thing, to me, is a game changer because of the fact that I would have spent 5 or 10 minutes just getting rid of borders and moving things around, just putting the tables up, setting your page up for success, and then hit that border 0 and just have those things sitting there. Oh, that is going to save me all kind of time as I set up my pages. But beyond that, like, the HTML, and from my perspective as a teacher who's trying to get things done effectively, efficiently, and with some efficacy, oh, dude, take the embed code from your Google Doc, from your Google Slide, from Formative, from this place, from that place, or whatever, from YouTube, whatever, and pick those things right where they belong and fix it in and forget it. Because again, as you go on your journey to, okay, now I want to kind of, what Webb just kind of mentioned, now I want to mess with the recipe. The gumbo's already there. I can mess in the background and stuff and playing with stuff without having to worry about whether my kids are eating or not, right? The stuff is all there, and then I can learn little tricks and tips and whatever. So again, learn just a little enough to be dangerous without the pressure of having to master a whole different skill set. Because Webbs, it took you how long to go from classroom teacher to professional software developer?
A year.
That's a year of you grinding on a daily basis to get the stuff knocked out. So now you didn't have to deal with 5-year-olds in the all day and then come home and like, oh, okay, let me now go and look at my HTML code. And it was like,
oh, I did. Yeah.
You did do that
Yeah,
every day?
it was my last year of teaching, 2016 to 2017, that I started doing that. So it was the tail end of 2015 when I started. So it was all of 2016 that I worked on my skills in order to get a job.
God bless you. Now, again, don't you? Webbs is an outstanding human being. That what?
And I had background because when I was in middle school is when I first got my very first taste of HTML and CSS. So I had been toying with HTML and CSS for a long time, 15 years. Yeah, something like that,
I mean,
before I decided to make that leap.
as somebody who's experienced, we had Commodore 64s when I was a kid, and it was MS DOS over everything. And then we kind of like when I got to middle school, we didn't have a computer class. We got to high school. The first 2 years of our first high school, we had a computer class. Really cool dude from Howard. The kids come over and hook us up. And then when I transferred schools, I didn't touch a computer again until I got to college. And so, which the fact that I am not 90 years old and that happened to me, like it also kind of makes you perceive the world differently. It's not this very progressive place. As I'm not that old. I'll be 40 next month. But like 1999, I did not touch a computer in school at all. At any no point did I touch a computer. When I got
Oh
to
wow.
college, so at my house we had a computer, and when I got to college, I had to use the computers all the time. And the fact that there are some kids who still experience that before this pandemic happened, not touching a computer at school, not touch a computer to be to create and to express themselves, it's kind of that's terrifying. I'll tell you the truth, like uber terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uber terrifying. Any other like ideas, things you would suggestions you would give teachers who are looking at Canvas as a place that perhaps they might toy around with code webs?
Um I mean, I think those are really the biggest things, like getting a handle on the basics of CSS. I would say focus more on the like layout of things and using CSS to control the layout of things, more so than worrying about like background color. You can also use it to change font if your fonts aren't particularly readable. So that's a direction to go. I wouldn't worry too much about like making a bunch of buttons that go places. But I would say get some basics on your page and then go back and refine how specific you want it to be. And going back to what you were saying, Mike, like focus more on the content itself and making sure the content is accessible from a perspective of like not only legibility but not overloading the screen with a bunch of hibida skibida,
Indeed,
so
indeed.
that it's easy to follow. Like it should be pretty basic. I think one of the best tips you gave me lately was start out in black and white and just get your information down and then go back and do all the making it pretty kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, every Sunday and Thursday, the Intelligent Hoodlums rock the internets with Hoodlum Culture. We are going to hopefully be continuing this Canvas type march as if you're a teacher, especially a teacher in Clark County School District, one of the things to kind of look at is, I tell this to people all the time. I'm a doomsday prepper when it comes to things like this. Like August 2021 would be kind of my focus at this point. Not to say that you're saying, hey, forget these kids that are sitting in front of me right now between now and the end of the school year, but you definitely don't want to be in the position where you're behind the eight ball in August without at least a couple weeks, couple months probably worth of content built into Canvas so that if and when something untoward happens. I was talking to a friend of mine. They're ending the mask mandate in her state at the end of the month, which is almost unfathomable. So there's going to be still virus around. So there's not going to be a situation where everybody's going to be vaccinated and whatnot. Who knows what happens to your school districts? Who also knows like what kind of innovative type ideas you can start to cultivate right now that are going to still benefit you in August because what were we talking? Was it you and I, Webs? Oh, Saturday during the campus class. Like fundamentally, there are no sick days anymore. There are no snow days. Like if you built your content so a kid can walk through it themselves, like if the kid gets hit by a spaceship tomorrow and is out for 6 weeks, after your class, they could sit with a computer and still be up with everybody else and do what they need to do, rather than before, where it was like, if you're out of school, hey, like we don't know. We don't know. When you come back, we'll see if we can catch you up, which is always an impossibility. Go ahead, Webbs.
Also, there is a legislation that's being proposed in the current session here in Nevada, that would have teachers post their lesson plans on the school website, which feels a bit like a waste of time, because if you're designing content for virtual learning, then it should be content that parents and teacher or kids and their parents can go over, their grown-ups can go over together. Because a lot of times I think about it like years ago when I first got diagnosed with my brain tumor, I wanted to know what my MRI said, and they wouldn't let me see it because I'm not a doctor, so I cannot interpret what that MRI says. And I think of lesson plans very much the same. Like, if you're not an educator, if you're not a professional in the education space, you may not, or even you're not that teacher, like you may not be able to interpret what's there in a meaningful way, and you could misinterpret it, because that's the whole reason they wouldn't let me see my MRI, is they didn't want you to misinterpret that you have something that you don't. And I think that this would be a solution to that. So it would give that accessibility so that if parents needed insight into what the lesson was, they could sit next to their kid and go through it with them. They'd know exactly what was coming. They'd know exactly like what the content was firsthand. And it's no additional work for the teacher because they're already publishing it for their students to use. So that feels very out of touch to me, that like you're proposing something as archaic as just post your lessons on a website versus here's the actual real lesson you can walk through, instead of just like the blueprints for the lesson. I don't understand.
The funny thing about that is the person who is actually advocating for this thing was a principal and all kinds of stuff like that. And you're kind of like, all right, dude. Then you as an administrator definitely know that everyone's lesson plans look totally different.
Yeah, right.
And also, it's like when you see a recipe online and people are like, oh yeah, you make it, and you're like, all right, cool. It looked like that in the picture, and then when you look at yours, you're like, nah, it's a totally
it's like the Pinterest version versus the real version.
You're like, okay, I did something wrong, right? So now you have this situation where now this person is further confused because someone who is not actually qualified to make the dish has now said, okay, I have the talents to do this, and now, oh, my kid is behind. Well, that's not my fault. You're the one that took took the recipe and you didn't know what you were doing with it. I had a very enlightening conversation with my dad about my father is works in a bank and been high levels of math, very, very, he was on this rant about Common Core math. And I'm like, Pops, it's not the standards, fam. It's not the standards. It is, everyone looked at those things and said it looked like this. And this person says it looks like this. And this person says it looks like this. And there's no uniformity in terms of this is what you're actually supposed to be able to do. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that I'm going to say that the state senator who is pushing that legislation is well intentioned. I think, again, it is a moonwalking situation, in which I'm looking at the past and saying these things were valuable in the past without looking forward and saying, if we had teachers who built Canvas courses and walkthroughs and videos and things like that, then I would see out of the expert's mouth, this is how we're going to do what we need to do. The same way Bob Ross taught me how to do to scribble on my sheet of paper, how Mr. Rogers walked me through stuff, how I watched tons of YouTube videos from people who know what they're talking about. They show me how to do things. I don't think you can disrespect the amount of schooling and intellect it's necessary to actually do the job, whether we call it teaching or something else. Most teachers I know have master's degrees. Now, you could do this job without a bachelor's degree and without a master's degree, and that's we've got another conversation that we need to have in terms of how education runs in the country. But 'tis what it is. So Canvas, a little bit of HTML, a little bit of CSS. Don't feel any pressure to master these things. Cheat, steal, move things around. Go to the W3 Schools deal. Get your page pretty like you want it. Copy the code off that thing and put it right inside that Canvas page and see if it works. If it doesn't, figure something else out. Delete it. The blank Canvas page is totally cool for everything that we need to do. Webs, you have that wakelet full of goodness that you sent before. So Webs will drop that inside the chat very quickly. So if you want to check out W3 Schools, I don't know what else did you include in that?
I have W3 Schools, coolers, a couple of HTML or tutorials, and the specificity calculator. And then we can add to it from there. So if you just kind of keep up to date on, or just like keep going back, it updates in real time. So I'll share that in all the chats. Maybe.
We got it. Twitch. We got it. Facebook.
Oopsie daisy. I just totally opened my bookmarks. There we go. And I'll tweet it in just a second. I just want to add some context because Twitter doesn't attach to the video.
Indeed. All right. So
also,
America, our friends who are going back to school physically in front of students tomorrow, be safe out there, my friends. Don't overdo it. Just make sure if you got windows, open your windows in your classroom. Open the windows in your classroom and figure it out. But yeah, don't overdo it, my friends. We have gone through a heck of a year, and just make sure you don't overdo it, and make sure that your health is paramount as we go through things. So God bless America. God bless Lesotho, my Lesotho peoples. I haven't said that one in a while. So peace. Love to my Lesotho peoples. And we are outro.